Earlier this morning, the Bank of Canada released two new economic reports, its Business Outlook Survey and its Survey of Consumer Expectations. Together, they shed some light on how businesses and consumers are coping with inflation. Our Peter Armstrong has been reading these reports, and he joins us now from Toronto. So, Peter, what can you tell us about how the central bank is viewing the economy right now?
Yeah, I mean, these reports are really interesting in that they sort of flush out what I think we already know and what the data have sort of been telling us. And I mean, you don't need to be an expert right now to recognize that the biggest concern, whether you're a big business, a small business, a consumer, or a consumer advocacy group, the concern is inflation, right? The prices are going northward and they're just showing no signs of relenting. So what can we do to try to bring those under control? What are the expectations for both consumers and businesses about whether that'll work and whether we can sort of drag prices back down to something approaching normal? And what we're hearing in these two reports is that consumers and businesses both expect that this is going to go on for longer than I think any of us had expected, right? We've been off base on our forecast around inflation really since the get-go. The moment COVID hit, we really haven't had a beat on it. So consumers think this is going to stick around longer. Businesses think that's going to drive up wages, that's going to drive up input costs, which is going to drive up their own output costs in terms of what we pay for stuff. But within all of that, and Diane, I think it's really important to point this out, that for all of that doom and for all of that gloom and that sense that boy, the economy might actually be heading for, certainly a slowdown and potentially even a recession, right now, the economy is doing quite well. We're seeing great job numbers. We're going to see yet more job numbers out on Friday that will back that up. We're seeing GDP expand at rates better than anybody else in the OECD. Largely because the price of energy is off the charts, and Canada's economy does quite well when energy prices are up. And there's one line in the Business Outlook Survey that really stood out at me, and it says, supported by strong demand, many firms intend to increase their investment spending and add staff over the next year. So yes, inflation is definitely a concern, and yes, people are worried about where we're headed, but at the same time, the economy is doing well, and firms are responding by investing in their businesses and adding more staff, and that's fundamentally a very good thing.
So it sounds like a lot of things are climbing. Some of those are good things, like, as you say, GDP and employment, but some of those are things people don't want to see climb, like prices and like interest rates. So I'm curious whether anything in these reports gives us a hint about what the bank is going to do with its next interest rate decision.
Yeah, and look, I think the bank's decision, we're going to get an interest rate decision from the Bank of Canada next Wednesday, so in 10 days' time or so. And I think an increase was definitely baked in. The question has been how steep, how sharp of an increase will we see? Our colleague Pete Evans just checked the Bloomberg terminal for me and says that the consensus of economists that have been consulted on this, they expect that we're going to see another 0.5%, 50 basis point increase next Wednesday when that comes out. But a sentiment like this, that consumers think this is going to go on for longer, could push the bank to move faster, because as you well know, Diane, if we believe there's going to be a contraction, if we believe inflation is going to continue to rise and borrowing costs are going to continue to rise, and maybe we'll start to scale back on our purchases, and maybe we'll not spend quite as much, and that will not just slow down our activity in the economy, it could amplify a potential downturn and slip things even faster. So you want to get those expectations under control. So I'll be interested to see come next Wednesday, how does the bank factor in this information that we're getting in these two reports today into their decision about where they move on interest rates next week.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Peter.
You bet.
That's the CBC's Peter Armstrong in Toronto.